Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod here with our first pregame show of the year. It's time to watch some real basketball. Well, almost real, I guess.
Kind
This
of
is an
real.
exhibition game,
Yeah.
but we can finally see the new roster in action on Thursday night at the Breslin Center. Time for ice cream sandwiches and Izzo getting upset, I guess. Michigan State will take on Bowling Green, who they faced in the regular season last year. So be sure to join us after the game, though, on YouTube, maybe on Twitter. We're going to see if we can get that to work as well, on Instagram for live post-game show and analysis. Rod, so let's talk about Bowling Green. I mean, they were, last year's season didn't go the way they'd hoped. I think we thought they're going to have a little bit more success, but it is so impossible trying to project how teams are going to do, the next year. I think this year they're projected to be middle of the pack. Last year they were 14 and 18, 8 and 10 under Todd Simon, who was a former Fowler native. They had a 14-point loss to the Breslin last year. Only one starter returning, one rotation players. I think this is probably a very typical story when you look at mid majors when it comes
Yeah.
comes time. And like I said, they're middle of the pack. They're projected seventh out of 14 teams in the MAC. It's kind of a little bit interesting that it's an exhibition game. Usually, the exhibition games at home anyway have been D1 schools, D2 like Grand Valley, Northern Michigan, Hillsdale, something like that. So this is a little bit different in that
I think
respect.
I have a theory on that based
Okay,
on something I saw Tom Izzo say, might have been yesterday. Um, it sounds like the Yukon exhibition, which is next, came up rather suddenly and, fairly late. I can't remember when that was announced, but it was sometime this summer, maybe July,
sounds about right.
somewhere around there. And he said it was Danny Hurley reached out to him kind of out of the blue and wanted to play it, and he thought it was a good idea. I'm almost wondering if maybe they were anticipating that they were going to do a more normal exhibition game in that slot, and instead UConn called and they decided to pivot and do that. Because you're right, normally, although we are seeing this with much more frequency.
Yes.
You look at Michigan, for example. Michigan already played Cincinnati. They're playing St. John's next. So two high majors. Michigan State's only playing one high major. You are definitely seeing this as a trend. And so I wonder if knowing Izzo, I can see him still wanting to give a D2 program the opportunity, particularly in-state programs, which he's done a
Right.
lot of.
Right.
I could see him not wanting to kick that to the curb, but it is an interesting development. And you're right. Normally, a team like Bowling Green would be the better exhibition game,
Right.
not
Well, and
not the
you're starting to
lesser.
see this too and you're seeing complaints now with mid majors saying that they're having trouble scheduling.
Yep.
You're
Illinois
scheduling any power state. Yeah, Illinois State was a
Illinois
good
State's
example.
coach, who used to
Yeah,
be an
complaining about
assistant at
that.
Ohio State. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's complained not only of challenging getting regular season games, and with the departure or the end of these multi-team events like the
Yep.
Maui Invitational,
Yep.
but other littler ones where it's an opportunity for these mid-major teams to participate and
Well,
play major programs. They're having trouble even scheduling exhibition games, which again, to your point with Michigan playing
yeah.
Cincinnati and St. John's,
And
there you're
that's not
getting,
unusual. We're seeing a lot
right.
of that. There's a point to be made here with I can't remember he was on. I know he was on the staff at Ohio State. Ryan something. I'm forgetting his last name. The
Longren, is
head
that
coach.
right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Something like that at Illinois State. Here's part of the problem, and it's what illustrates the incredible difficulty of Michigan State's schedule this year. You are now with a major conference like the Big Ten. Not everybody, but some are playing 20 game conference schedules, right? So
Right.
that's 20 games. That's two more that used to be available for non-conference scheduling that now isn't. Those
Sure.
December games, right?
Yep.
And so that's had an effect. You don't have as many slots available to play anybody. You can just start from there. And then so you're down in Michigan State's case, they're playing 10 non-conference games. Okay. Um, there's only so many spots available. And particularly now, not everybody is Tom Izzo. And they're going to schedule,
Yeah.
Arkansas and Duke at home and, play Kentucky on a neutral site, North Carolina on a neutral site. Not everybody is him, but I think one trend that I'm actually happy to see is with the de-emphasis on multi-team events, at least other than these Vegas, play for
Right.
NIL things, which I'm not even sure. Even that seems to have the shine's gone off that a little bit this year. It seems to me. I've seen a couple
Yeah.
of programs pulling out of those events now, but you are seeing more of what MSU was able to do this year: high major home and homes, which is something that had pretty much disappeared from
Yeah.
the landscape for the last decade or so. And now it's coming back. I mean, even a guy like John Calipari, who was the most vehement opponent to the home and home thing among high majors. Remember, he killed the Indiana series when he was at Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
I think he tried because Indiana didn't want to do it in a neutral site.
Oh,
I
okay.
think with Louisville, I can't remember what the deal was there, whether he got it successfully moved to a neutral site or not. But he was the most vehement guy among major coaches against that stuff, but not alone by any means. He called Michigan State to set up a home and home with Arkansas. So we are seeing a shift there. But the long and the short of it for the mid majors, for the Illinois States, the Bowling Greens, programs like that, is it's just going to be ever more difficult to find an opportunity because, and I would say even worse for an Illinois State, because they're really, I would almost classify the Missouri Valley as a mid-major plus.
Yeah. They're
That's
tough
not the
mid majors,
MAC.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's not the MAC. And you think about it, do you want to take the chance of playing that school? When you've only got 10 opportunities, it
Right.
seems to me that the standard now, and I think he might have even said this, is we want to only play like top 75 schools or 300 and below schools.
Right.
Because the
Yeah.
300 and below, you can, if it truly works out that way, they're at the level you think they are, you don't take the hit to your metrics because you can blow them out by 30, 40 points,
Right.
you
Right.
know? And so that's not a negative in that sense. And you obviously get the opportunity to play a lot of guys and all the things that coaches like about those games. And then on the other end, if you're playing highly rated teams, you're not going to take a hit, win or lose. The problem is that big middle class.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that it's going to change much. I think you can look at all of these aspects and see that just like with the effect of analytics on the way the game is played, that you have so many of these coaches now that only want layups and dunks or 3-pointers, nothing in the middle. It that is now arrived with regard to scheduling.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's an easy fix for it.
No, it's a totally rational response that
Yeah.
for coaches because and also I would probably add that on some level too, with the expansion of these conferences, you are occasionally playing the dregs of the conference. You might get some bad metrics in a conference that normally didn't have bad metrics before. Right now that you're expanded to 18 or 20 teams, you can play a team that's sub 75. Like playing Minnesota
Right.
2 years ago,
Right.
they were like
Yep.
250th or something.
That's
And so
right.
that's
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 right.
a dangerous team to be playing in
Yep.
conference, and then to add
Every
extra
once in a
in the
while. Right.
non-conference.
And those are
Yeah,
games you can't do anything about.
right. You've got to play those
Right.
exactly. Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I think all of that is leading toward squeezing that middle class out, which probably suits the powers that be, like the SEC commissioner, et cetera, just fine, because it you can see where this kind of rationale is taking us, right?
yeah,
Where it's taking us is, hey, why are we bothering being in the same entity, playing the same sport with the rest of these schools? We should just make it the big boys.
yep,
And we may end up there.
yeah. Well, see, but I guess that has little to do with Bowling Green right now. let's talk about Bowling Green. There's obviously a relationship with Michigan State and Bowling Green, which is, I think, largely the reason why they're coming as an exhibition. Tum Tum
Yeah.
Nairn is an assistant coach on the team,
Yep.
which is, a lot of these non-conference games. Like I can't imagine. I'm actually a little surprised that Western Michigan hasn't found its way onto the schedule since Dwayne Stevens has taken over as head coach there. But we're
No, they
seeing
have.
Detroit. Oh, they are.
They have. Haven't they?
Okay, I don't know.
Haven't
Did
they?
they? I,
I'm pretty
oh
sure
yeah,
they played. Didn't they
did
play
we
them
play
last
last
year?
year? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this shows you
Yes, they
my
did
age, I
because
guess. They did.
They
That's right.
did because they
And
played
now that,
Chauncey Willis. Yeah, they
right.
did.
There you go. Exactly.
And they played
see,
Eastern. I mean, he's
they played
with
Eastern, and
Stan
then the
Heath.
Detroit Mercy is coming up this year, which is
Yep. Mark
so
Montgomery.
Mark
Yeah,
Montgomery's
he does.
team.
He's
Yeah.
doing that.
So yeah. So never mind. I take that back. They did play Western Michigan.
I had to think about it for a second, but yeah, pretty sure they did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's obviously, and not just Tom. I mean, Todd Simon being a Fowler native, that's another thing Izzo's done over the years as well. Is he's played guys maybe didn't have Michigan State connections, but they were Michigan guys.
Yeah.
And Izzo being someone who cares about that, cares about the profession, all of those things, he's always had a tendency to play those kind of games. So, and obviously his relationship with Todd Simon must be good because this is, I believe, the third time he's played a Todd Simon team. He played him when he was coach. Was it Utah Valley, I believe?
Yeah.
Whatever, Southern Utah. I can never keep it straight.
Northern Arizona? Was he at Northern Arizona?
No.
Or
That was a different. That's a UP guy.
UP guy. That's right.
He played him when he was, and I apologize to the Fowler folks out there listening to this, but I know he was a coach at one of the Utah schools. I think it was either Utah Valley or Southern Utah. Can't remember which right now. He played them once. Then he played Bowling Green last year, and now he's playing them in this exhibition. So obviously, that's Tum related, but it's not just Tum.
Right.
I think it's both. And and speaking of Tum, I mean, I'm expecting, it would not surprise me if we see a move from him sometime in the near future. I don't know about this offseason or not, but he got experience coaching the Bahamas national team. He's been very prominent on this Bowling Green staff, and they haven't had like the breakthrough season where it would really get attention. But he definitely seems to be a guy, a guy who's ready to take that next step. And honestly, although I don't necessarily see the obvious position for it, you'd love to see it at Michigan State, a move up to Michigan State as an assistant before Izzo's done. But I don't know if, excuse me, I don't know if that's in the cards. We'll just have to see, because MSU staff seems pretty locked in at the moment. It's kind of hard to see the obvious guy who would be taking a high, a head coaching job from it. Maybe Sadi would be a candidate, and so I don't know, but definitely it's a reunion opportunity with him again, an opportunity to give a Michigan guy a game in Todd Simon, and so that's why and a MAC opponent in an exhibition game. I mean, Bowling Green isn't Purdue, but this is as you said, they're picked middle of the pack in the MAC. So that's a game, and when you look at their rosters, we're going to talk about, they've got decent size. So it's not one of those situations where you say, okay, they're not running anybody bigger than 6'7" out there. We'll just sort of overwhelm them with post play and win it that way. It's going to require Michigan State to do some things to win this game. So that's a good setup for a first game, for first exhibition.
Yeah. All right. Well, you want to just get into the roster, I suppose?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So opposing line brought to you by the Brothers Adjusted Gutters and sponsoring a player to keep in the gutter. As you call Brothers Adjusted Gutters, it is time for make sure those leaves stay out of your gutters. If you have like getting up on the ladders and you're crazy, then don't call the Brothers Adjusted Gutters. But if you don't like doing that, give them a call. They'll come up to clean out your gutters. Maybe you got some problems with your gutters, you can get them fixed. They can do the job as well. They'll get on the ladders, take care of all that stuff, whether it's your home, your business, whatever it might be. One section, one run of gutters. Maybe it's a whole thing that needs to be replaced or fixed up. They can do it. Great pricing. You get 10% off. You mentioned Final Four when you get your estimate. You can do that at our support page at tffinots.com/support. There you can have a link for Kurt on the west side or Greg on the east side of the state. They'll get you set up. You don't need to flag them down when you see them in the street. Just give them a call and they'll come by and get you. They've taken care of both Rod's stuff and mine, and they've done great, fantastic work. We've been very happy with it. So, all right, let's get into the starting lineup or suspected starting lineup for the game. And we'll be with Javonte Campbell, 6'2" senior guard. He's he's a lone returning starter. He had a strong year last year. He averaged almost 15 points a game, which was second on the team. He shot 50, 25, and 76, averaging more than 6 free throw attempts per game, and led the team in assists with 98 in just 32 games. Did have 90 turnovers too, so he was not a great assist turnover ratio. And obviously with his 25 as a 3-point shooting, you definitely see one of the deficiencies in his game there as well.
Yeah, he's also considered to be an elite defensive guard in that league. He averaged just a tick under 3 steals per game. So Campbell is, if you're going to have one starter back, that's a pretty good guy to have back. I didn't take a look at the box score to see how he did against MSU last year. All I remember was the big kid shooting jumpers. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but that was a D2 transfer, but that was crazy. But Campbell had a really good season, and he's a first-team All-MAC choice in the preseason. So pretty clearly he should be the number one option coming in. I think what you're going to want to see Michigan State do here is emphasize keeping him out of the lane, which can be easier said than done. But when you've got a guard who averaged 6 free throw attempts per game, that and the points that he did, that tells you that he was pretty effective at getting to the basket. So what you want to see is MSU forcing him, at least early on, to be a jump shooter. And then if he's hitting jumpers, okay, you adjust accordingly. But I think that's what you want to do in order to give yourself the best shot at containing him. But definitely a very good player. I would say pretty clearly, at least coming into the season, seems to be an obvious choice as their number one option. And again, a good challenge for Michigan State's guards. It'll be interesting to see whether they have Jeremy Fears on him to start or whether Fears is guarding their point guard, in which case it would fall to either Cohen Carr or whichever of Trey Fort and Kurt Tang starts to guard Campbell. And I think that would be a very interesting challenge for any of those guys right out of the chute.
Yeah, it'd be great. A great test for them to kind of see how they are defensively compared to last year's team, because obviously elite defensive on the perimeter for Michigan State last year with Hallman, Akins, Fears. So then moving on to Jason Kimbrough, 6-foot JUCO transfer. He's an honorable mention, All-American pick. He averaged 18.6 points a game, 48, 46, and 86. So when that's with heavy 3-point volume. Shot, and also not only with the shooting, but he also went along with 6.2 assists per game. So likely he's going to be the starting point guard for this team.
Yeah, I mean, the two things you really like are the two things that Campbell didn't do well, right? He shoots threes well, or at least he did at the JUCO level, and he was a good ball handler. He was a good playmaker for his team. You don't know how well that stuff's going to translate as you're moving up levels, but at least Kimbrough gives you an indication that he could be an answer to what maybe they lacked a little bit last season in giving them a real floor leader who can also stretch a defense.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? It's not an automatic that you would put Fears on Campbell because you may feel like Fears needs to guard Kimbrough. And so that'll be an interesting thing to see how MSU opts to play it.
And then we have Javon Ruffin, 6'5", senior transfer from Colorado. He started 10 games last year. He averaged a little over 5.5 points a game, 2 rebounds a game, shot 37, 32, and 79.
Yeah, and this is where I'm guessing. This is the one spot where I'm not sure what they're likely to do. And believe me, I spent some time looking into it. There's just not a lot out there with Todd Simon talking to the media. There's a couple of candidates on their bench, too, for this spot, it would seem to me, that we'll get into in a minute. But I went with Ruffin because he played a lot for a high major, Big 12 team in Colorado. I had to think for a second where they are. And that's always an advantage, for a program like Bowling Green to have high major guys, and they've managed to bring in a couple in their portal class. But I think Ruffin is a decent candidate to start. If not, he'll get a lot of minutes off the bench. Not great offensive numbers, but again, that experience at the high major level should help him.
And then this is just an example. He's 6'5", so pretty good size for the wing. And then we move on to the four. Sam Towns, 6'9", 200-pound
Yep.
senior, suffered an injury just the first 6 games of this year. So he averaged 7 points, 7 rebounds a game, had about and 1.5 blocks a game. So definitely a force inside defensively.
Yeah, and I think that's a big player, literally and figuratively, to get back.
Yeah,
Giving them a legitimate high major sized power forward, maybe a little on the thin side, but you look at 7 rebounds and 1.5 blocks. He obviously was able, and that was I didn't look to see everybody Bowling Green played in those first 6 games. I think Michigan State was in there. I seem to remember Towns playing against them, but
yeah,
there were probably other high majors sprinkled in there, and so he produced in the early part of their schedule, theoretically at least, against decent opposition. Uh, that's a big deal, for a MAC program to have another guy that size. It gives them a chance to really compete well in the paint in that league, and in a game against Michigan State. You've got a physical match for what MSU is going to throw at you at the 4. So obviously they're hoping that he gets back to the level he was at pre-injury. But yeah, an important player for them to get back. So when I said they only had one starter coming back, it's really two, but
yeah,
he
right.
missed most of the season. So
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and they still have size to the 5. They have Troy Glover, 6'10", 230 pounds. He's a senior transfer from D2 Missouri St. Louis. He was the conference defensive player of the year, so you definitely see a trend here with the players that Bowling Green's pulling in. He averaged 10.7 points a game, 8.6 rebounds a game, shot 65% from the floor, and
and
2 blocks a game. Yeah,
average more than 2 blocks a game.
right.
So I think the anticipation here is that he's going to provide Bowling Green with legitimate rim protection as well as some above the rim presence on offense. They've talked about him as a lob option, the way Michigan State uses
Sure.
Carson Cooper, for example. We'll see what kind of connection he's developed with guys like Kimbrough and Campbell. But I think a really good addition for them to have a guy who, physically at least, could play that position at the high major level. You're not forced to go in an undersized direction. And yet they think athletically he's got enough where he can help them in a lot of different ways. So, with a D2 guy, you never know for sure how it's going to translate, but we've seen a lot of success stories in recent years, and it won't be surprising if Glover ends up being a pretty good player for them.
Well, what's nice too, just looking at the starting lineup, this is a normal looking lineup. Like this is a team you're not going to expect to have Michigan State have to play sort of weird lineups to
Yes.
just counter, right? And so for
Yes.
an exhibition game, this is kind of nice. You can sort of like, okay, this is what we're usually going to do. So we're going to have our usual lineup out there versus playing a Hillsdale or someone with a lot smaller team where you're like,
Yep.
well, what do you do when you got there's 5 is 6'7", 6'8". Now you can overwhelm them, but maybe you have trouble guarding these guys. So it's at least in that sense, it's probably nice. And I suppose going back to your discussion about scheduling these exhibition games, that's always a challenge, right? If you play these high majors, you run the risk if you lose. Yeah, it doesn't count, but it does count, and it does count to fans, to media. Michigan losing that game at home to Cincinnati, even though it was an exhibition game, for sure affects voters and the AP, which I guess ultimately doesn't matter, but it certainly will.
It
It does make a
doesn't, but
difference.
you can, look, I think for the most part, coaches are fine with it because the way they look at it is, hey, this is a game that's not impacting our record, it's not impacting our metrics, but it gives us a chance to see where the holes are.
Yeah,
If I was Dusty May, for example, um, one, I would stop talking about how my team has the pieces to win a national title. I would stop doing that if I were him. because he hadn't done shit in that job to justify that kind of talk. Certainly not about a team that has so many new pieces. But on the positive side, I would look at it and say, okay, we still had massive turnover problems. We still didn't shoot the three well. And more importantly, defensively, we were awful.
Yeah.
We couldn't guard anybody on the perimeter. Nobody. That's okay though, because you could say, all right, now we've got a chance to address it. Now guys have seen it. They're not just hearing it from the coaches. They've gone
Right.
out there, played a game, and gotten their ass kicked. So that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and most coaches will say that, and I think they mean it. You
Yeah.
know,
I
it's
think that's
sort of the
probably
best
true.
of both worlds. You take the ass kicking, but you don't have any impact on what you, and that stuff gets forgotten. I mean, you remember the year that Michigan State got beat by Grand Valley in exhibition game, and I mean, I remember it, but by January, I didn't care.
Yeah.
You
Right. Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so it's okay.
Well,
But I do think your point about the nice part about at least what I think, and again, this is a guess because at the starting lineup, because there's not a lot of information out there right now from the Bowling Green side. But I feel pretty safe in this group with the possible exception of the wing of the Ruffin kid.
yeah.
The other four I feel pretty good about will be their starters. The nice thing is you're not going to have Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler having to chase around 6'5" guys.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
It's going to be
That's the
more
key.
conventional, which is going to help prepare you much better for what you're going to see when the games are real.
Right. Well, let's talk about the reserves too. And these are players that, potentially might be in that three spot. It would be a Justin Thomas, 6'7" senior transfer from Florida State, where he averaged a little under 5 points a game, 2.3 rebounds a game, played 22 minutes, started 5 games. He shot 42, 33, and 56. 56, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, for them, his length on the perimeter, he's 6'7", but he is considered to be a guard. That kind of length and size on the perimeter should be an asset. And I would think either he'll be starting instead of Ruffin or he's going to play a lot off the bench. The shooting numbers, as you say, are not great. But again, Florida State, they were bad last year, but they did play in the ACC. So you're talking about guys that have been through it. It's sort of like, although it's a year removed from it, but it's sort of like Trey Fort at Michigan State. Trey Fort does have high major experience. He did a year at Mississippi State. So that should, at least in theory, make it easier for him to transition in the case to the high major level because he's done it before. With these guys, they're transferring down to the mid-major level. So the hope is, hey, I've got somebody who's been through it at the highest level of play.
Right.
That should mean they're that much more effective when we're playing MAC schools.
And we'll talk to someone going the other direction. That's Josiah Shackelford, 6'4" sophomore transfer from D2 Flagler College in Florida. He was the conference's freshman of the year and a third-team all-league pick. He averaged almost 16 points a game, 4 rebounds a game, shot 49, 45, and 78. He's also 215 pounds. So, I mean, we talk about this all the time, these players in D2 that sort of their way, much like the coaching ranks nowadays with the transfer portal, you can be D2, go to mid-major, and then be on a high major team next year if you suddenly explode in that conference. So that's always a chance for these guys.
Yeah, you just don't know how it's going to translate.
Exactly.
But at least on paper, it looks very intriguing. A guy that size, which is, that's like Big Ten power wing. That's like, and I'm not comparing them as players, but that's like John Tonje. Who was the kid at Ohio State a few years ago that kept getting hurt? Oh God, I'm drawing a blank. Kid from Florida. Anyway, that physically, and the combination of those physical tools and being a 50-45 guy shooting the ball, that's intriguing. The question mark is he did it at the D2 level. So how is it going to translate over here? But you could see, I mean, it wouldn't be totally shocking to see a kid like Shackelford, if he really gets it done at Bowling Green this year, to go D2 Bowling Green, and then maybe a high major next year.
Yeah.
Because at least if it translates, that combination of that kind of size on the wing and that kind of skill set, that's exactly what you're looking for. But again, remains to be seen how well it translates. I don't have him starting, but is it going to shock me if he's announced as a starter come Thursday night? No. I don't know enough
Right.
about what Bowling Green's got going on, but you would at least anticipate he's going to play a significant role for them.
And then we have Preston Squire, 6'11", 240 pounds, junior. He played 18 games last year for Bowling Green, where he averaged 1.6 points a game, 1.2 rebounds a game. So he's obviously the depth at the 5.
Bowling Green's got 3 legitimate post players on the roster, which you don't always see at a team at this level. Squire might be the 3rd guy. I would anticipate he's competing for role providing depth behind Glover, but he's got competition for it. But 6'11", 240, you can't teach that.
And then Aiden Goins, I'm assuming no relation to Kenny Goins.
No.
6'9", 275 pounds, junior, D2 transfer from Walters State, where he averaged a little under 16 points a game, 5.3 rebounds a game, and hit 43% from 3, 53% overall from the field.
Yeah, I would think he's in line to compete with Squire for those backup minutes. I've got to believe that Glover is the likely starter, but you can imagine a world. Look, if you're 6'9", 275 and you could shoot 40% from 3, you're going to play. Yeah. And again, we got to see how it all translates. And given his size, I have to expect that there are conditioning concerns, but we'll see. They rolled that kid out last year. It was 300 plus. I think, and he didn't have any problem playing minutes, so we'll see. But Goins and Squire are the 2 guys that I think are gonna fight for those backup minutes. And who knows? Maybe they think they can play. Glover is athletic. Maybe they think they can get away with some too big looks when they want to give Towns a rest. So it's an intriguing thing about this team. If I were a Bowling Green fan, I would feel pretty decent about the way this roster looks, at least on paper, because you've strengthened the backcourt. You brought in a JUCO guy you think can run the offense. You've got Campbell, who's a preseason All-MAC choice. You've added 2 wings who have high major experience and a D2 guy who looks like he might be able to play. And you've got legitimate size. You got 4 guys 6'9" or taller.
Right.
So it's an interesting roster that Todd Simon's put together. We've just got to see how all these guys, so many of these guys, you have huge question marks. It's really Campbell's and Towns to a degree are the only proven commodities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as nice and conventional as it'll be for Michigan State playing Bowling Green, I'm sure Todd Simon feels the exact same way for his line. He can find out a lot of stuff about these guys he's got on his team.
Absolutely.
Who belongs where, right? He's got, I assume, probably 2 exhibition games in order to figure out what his starting lineup is going to be. I mean, I imagine that's a lot, and where real minutes are going to be, because it's different playing scout teams all the time, right? At some point, you got to play actual opposition.
Yeah, you got to figure out your rotation, who's slotting in where, and they face the same issues that Tom Izzo does.
Yep. Next, we have Camden Carroll, 6'9", 220-pound freshman from Byron Center, Michigan, outside Grand Rapids. He's a projected third team all D1 selection last year not projected. He was a 3rd team all D1 in state of Michigan last year.
Yeah, he's a good get. I don't know how big the role's going to be right away, because again, we've talked about it, they've got all this size, and you would think he's going to project as at least a 4-man eventually for Bowling Green, maybe even a 5, depending upon how much stronger he can get. But he's a kid that took some unofficials to Michigan State when he was younger, like when he was a sophomore, junior. It was unclear at that point whether he was going to, as it is often, you'll have these guys who are very good high school players. You're just not sure, are they eventually going to be a high major recruit? There were a couple of guards in this year's class who I think fell into that category in state. You had Carlos Medlock and KJ Torbert. And it was unclear. Okay, you could see it going either way. Well, Carlos Medlock took off like a rocket after a great high school season. He was incredible on the Adidas circuit, ended up getting a slew of high major offers in the spring, and Michigan State got him. On the other side, KJ Torbert, it ended up being demonstrated, at least for coaches, that he was more of a mid-major guy. So this kid fell into that same category. It was tough to tell whether he was going to be a high major level recruit or mid-major. He ended up slotting in mid-major. Bowling Green got him, and if he makes good on the potential that he has, that could end up being a really good get for them. But I don't know how much time we're going to see this year.
Right. Yeah. We'll certainly see him on Thursday, just because exhibition, you're going to be able to, and back in Michigan. And finally would be Mekhi Leach, 6'2" freshman guard from Toledo. He's a first team All-State player in Ohio, where he shot 60, 38, and 81.
Yeah, more of a scorer in high school than a floor leader. He only averaged 2.8 assists per game. So I don't know that they would see him as a point guard. But look, if you're even with the reduced levels of talent in recent years in upper Midwest states, if you're a first team All-State player in Ohio, you're pretty good. And that, again, would seem to me to be a pretty good get for them. But I don't know how big the available role is going to be. The one thing I would say is he's really only one of three guys, along with Campbell and Kimbrough, that's a true guard. The other guys they've got project more as wings. They're a little bigger. So maybe there's a small role available for Leach, or maybe he's so good that he just forces himself into minutes. It remains to be seen. But like with Carroll, I think that looks like good high school recruiting to me. They also have one other guy worth mentioning, Mayar Wall, who's a 6'8", 190-pound junior transfer from Eastern Kentucky, where he averaged 9 points and 5 rebounds a game last year, shot 40, 33, and 76. I think he's slated to be a backup, likely as a bit of an undersized four-man would be my guess. But given the production at a roughly comparable level to Bowling Green, I would expect that Wall's going to be in the rotation somewhere.
All right. Well, I think it's pretty obvious, but who is your player to keep in the gutter for this game for Michigan State?
Well, I got to go with Javonte Campbell.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, is it going to be shocking if somebody like Kimbrough or Shackelford, somebody like that, ends up being their leading scorer? No. But I think Campbell is the obvious choice, a first-team preseason All-MAC player, very productive a year ago. I think the question for him, and again, there's just not enough info on Bowling Green out there to know, but I have to think that the emphasis with him has probably been on improving the consistency with the jumper. So if he could do all the things that he obviously did a year ago and maybe tick that shooting from three up to even like 33%. The thing is, he didn't take many of them. He only averaged 1.5 attempts per game. So he knew the limitations in his game, but you would ideally like a guy like that playing that kind of role for you to be a little more productive. If he can even get up to like 33%, but with higher volume, you could be talking about a 20-point a game guy pretty easily. So, yeah, he's the obvious choice.
All right, so then moving on to Who Cleans the Glass Best, brought to you by the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. Friends, if you need your glass cleaned, and that's your home, your business, a high rise, whatever it might be, even the state capital, the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids can take care of it. Fantastic pricing, the nicest people you ever meet. They will be super thorough. They can just do the exterior. They can do the interior. They can do both. They can do your blinds, the screens, whatever it might be. They can also even power wash your home. Whatever you need done, the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids can take care of the job. And it's a very large region. So even if you're not in Grand Rapids, but Grand Rapids adjacent, we'll say, within, say, 100 miles of Grand Rapids, give them a call. Troy and his team can hook you up. The nice thing, too, is you get 15% off your estimate if you go to our support page and mention Final Four when getting that. Again, it's at the Final Four, so on the schedule.com/support. You can find the link for the Squeegee Squad. Have them come out and check out the place. Get those things done before winter. You'll be glad you did. This game will not actually count since this is an exhibition game, so we're not going to count. But right now, it's all clean. I got wiped out last year.
We're not counting these?
No, these are not. These are exhibition. Well, because these lineups.
Well, I guess I'll see how I feel about that after it's over.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to depend on how well you do. That's just my guess. since I lost last year, I'll pick first, and I'll pick first in the. So then I can pick first in the very first game.
How
So
does that wait? How does that work? Shouldn't I be rewarded?
I had to wear a basketball on my head
All
for a whole
right,
show.
fair
So I think
enough. All
that
right,
was probably
fair enough.
yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, obviously, so I think I do like the snake method. I think we'll probably do that again. So I'll pick
All
first and
right,
fourth, and then take second, third. Which actually, it may be best being second and third this year. I'm not sure. That seemed to be sort
we'll
of how it played
see.
out last year. But I'll go Jackson Kohler because I expect that he'll be out playing the bulk of the minutes at the four, and
Yeah,
he'll be rebounding like normal.
I'm gonna go with Carson Cooper and Cohen Carr.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Think you'd end up too.
I thought about it. I thought about Cam Ward or Jesse McCulloch, but it's minutes more than anything else. Right now, at least, we got to see how it evolves.
Yeah, exactly. And that may be more of what it comes down to anyway. And so I think this is the tricky thing for the four, who's number four. And I think we'll just go Cam Ward. I think he'll get some time out there. And I do think he's good. He's gonna be a really good rebounder. There's every
He
reason to
will
think he
be.
will be. So
He will
anyway,
be.
so I'll take Kohler and Ward, and you've got Cooper and Carr. Almost all C names except one that's K, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on then to Five Keys to the Game, brought to you by Nudge Printing. You can see if you're watching video. I've got my Final Fours on the schedule. Quarter zip. They have this. They have got some hoodies. They've got T-shirts. But even if you don't want our stuff, you can definitely get regular Michigan State apparel. Whatever you need, super high quality, the most comfortable stuff. This is the best. All their stuff is great. The only problem and downside is once you accumulate some, you really don't need any more because it lasts so long. It sustains many washes and still is super comfortable. Also, you get 20% off if you type in Final Four, just as one word at checkout when you go to nudgeprinting.com. Check out all their stuff. They got sales all the time as well. You can check it out at nudgeprinting.com again. And they also have other schools too if you're interested. So go there today. You won't regret it. All right. So we'll begin with the Five Keys of the Game. Start with number one, health.
Yeah, it almost should go without saying, but obviously
Yeah.
you don't want to have any issues related to health in an exhibition game. You want to keep everybody fresh, everybody uninjured. Ultimately, that's the number one thing coming out of a game like this that you want to make sure you've accomplished is stay healthy. I mean, Michigan State's already lost one guy for the season, although interestingly, despite the fact that they've said he's not playing, he's done. I did see a clip yesterday from Michigan State practice with Caleb Glenn out there shooting jumpers, which is interesting to say the least. I don't think that means anything definitely, but it's interesting to me. Anyway, they don't want anybody to join Caleb Glenn.
Yeah, right. Well, and of course, with eligibility issues right now or rules or lack of rules, you wonder if there's any point to a red shirt, if there's any point to having someone not play half a season. It's not clear to
Well,
me
he's got
anymore.
he will have 2 years of eligibility left. That's been made
Right.
definitive. So he is able to take the red shirt. But yeah, you gotta point in a way if we're going to 5, which we may be, or 10 or 15, whatever it's going to be, no limits.
Yeah.
And by the way, just not to get sidetracked too much, but yesterday saw a guy who's got G League experience,
G League, yes.
who's I think 21,
Yeah.
22, commit
He's
to
young for the
Louisville.
college ranks now. Yeah.
Commit to Louisville, where he's going to play this
Yeah.
year. That's where we're at. So if you think there's anything barring anything, I mean, I'm surprised Hunter Dickinson's not back somewhere. I
I am
really
a little
am.
bit too. Maybe he was tired of going to class because
Maybe.
there's still that requirement kind of now, I suppose. I mean,
Yeah.
at least nominally you have to go to
Theoretically.
school. Yeah.
But anyway, you want to stay healthy. We'll get back to the
Yeah.
point.
And I would also probably say Caleb Glenn. I would imagine with the way that the lineup is right now, that the only way you'd see him come back with them considering is if there were some significant injuries or some sort of
Right.
problems
That's
with
true.
numbers.
Michigan State does look to be in pretty good shape right now. I
Certainly
said
at
that
that
at the time
position.
he got hurt. Not that you wanted him to get hurt, because I think he would have helped a lot. But if there was any spot that they could withstand an injury, it was that one, because they had Cohen Carr, Cam Ward, arguably, and this has been borne out, at least for what everything Izzo's saying about the readiness to play, Jordan Scott
Right.
as well. You've got three guys who fit that same big wing mold. So it was, I think you're right. That would be the only time there would be even a thought about it.
All right. So moving on to the second key of the game. It's one that we see many times. It's transition game.
Yeah, and no better time to bring it back up than the first uh, exhibition game, at least. The thinking is that MSU will and needs to be at the same level in transition as they were a year ago. And honestly, this is one thing that even with the loss of the guys they have departed from that backcourt group, I don't see any reason why Michigan State's transition game should suffer. I
Yeah.
really don't, because the rebounding, which we'll get to in a minute, I expect to be very good again, which is a necessity for having a good transition game. You need to clear your defensive glass well. But Jeremy Fears is out there triggering, and I think MSU's wings seem to be well built to continue that. So you want to see the right habits ingrained immediately. And so we want to see Michigan State out in transition a lot. Last year, they averaged almost 15 points a game on the fast break. That was fourth in the country. So that's a high standard. But when I look at it, and I'm sure Tom Izzo feels the same way, I don't think there's a reason why they can't duplicate that with this group. I really don't.
Yeah. And I think you could argue too, and we'll get to this a little bit. If the shooting is a little bit better from outside three, you're going to be more than 15 points a game. Because
Could be because they're hitting more transition
those threes.
threes. Yep,
Yeah, for
you're
sure.
right. You're right.
All right. So the third key to the game, as you mentioned and alluded to just there, is rebounding. And so Michigan State was obviously elite defensive offensive rebounding team last year. I think top 30 for both.
Yep.
And no reason to think they'd be any different this year, really.
Yeah, and that's the goal. I mean, okay, you've had several years in the wilderness where one way or another you weren't at program standards, and you got back there last year. Now you look at this team, is there any excuse for not repeating that? I would say no. Your big man group, you lost Zapala, but I think we all feel Jesse McCullough is going to be able to at least contribute what Zapala did a year ago. You've added Cam Ward, who's another nice piece to that front court group. Kohler and Cooper should do nothing but improve. And I think this perimeter group actually has a chance to be better rebounding than it was a year ago. Cohen Carr hopefully is going to be a better version of himself. Mm-hmm. And it's something we've talked about with Kurt Tang, even in brief moments of playing time. You saw that he has a nose for the ball. And I think Trey Fort, we haven't seen it yet, but with his physical tools, there's no excuse for him not being an effective rebounder. So I think this team has a chance to even be a little better than they were a year ago. That's the hope, at least. But again, like with transition, we need to see habits established right out of the starting line.
Yeah. All right. So moving to the fourth key of the game is jump shooting, one that is fixated by lots of fans, especially 3-point shooting, which was truly abysmal last year. Sub 300, the worst in Izzo's career. For a program, I should say, that usually is really pretty good 3-point shooting.
Yes.
Has not been great the last 2 years and really bad last year. So there's every reason to think it'd be better, at least from the additions and subtractions from last year's team. But it's got to happen.
It's got to happen. Now, again, I want to emphasize, I've got this on the list because I'm certainly not saying, oh, it doesn't matter. But Michigan State was one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country last year, and look where they finished.
Elite Eight's pretty
good.
So
you cannot tell me that it's a necessity to have an extremely good team. It's not. If you do other things well, we don't know yet with this team whether they'll do all those other things as well as they did a year ago. I think there's reason to wonder about the defense. Number 4 team in the country defensively. That's a high bar to clear.
Yeah.
And do I expect them to take a little bit of a drop off from that? Yes. For there to be a little bit of a drop off? Yes, I do. I hope, and I don't think it'll be drastic, but so if that's the case, then where are you making up for that otherwise? Well, one area they can make up for it a little bit is in perimeter shooting. It's not the most critical thing by a long shot because Michigan State doesn't ever rely on it, even when they're good shooting the ball. It's not a massive part of what they do offensively. That's why, despite it being as bad as it was a year ago, it didn't impact them that much as a team. That's the reason. And that gets lost a lot
Yeah.
with casual people who only understand ball go through hoop. Um, all that said, I think there's a reasonable chance, if for no other reason than they were so bad a year ago, that they're going to be improved.
Yeah.
You've
They
added
can't
some
not be. Yeah.
guys who can shoot. Trey Fort, very good shooter a year ago. Jordan Scott, Izzo talks about him as being one of his best shooters. That was his reputation coming out of high school. But I think what it's really going to come down to, obviously, is returnees. Kurtang is the guy most often talked about as their best shooter. He didn't get a chance to show very much of it last year. He was considered one of the best in his class nationally in high school 2 years ago. So can he live up to that reputation? Can guys like Kohler and Carr and I can't believe I'm saying it, Carson Cooper and Jeremy Fears, the guys that are back, can they improve? If not solely in percentage, then in some combination of efficiency and volume. Can they be better than they were a year ago? How good, we've heard a lot of good things about Jesse McCullough as a stretch. How much of that shows up? So I think there's a reasonable chance to think, a reasonable chance for this team to be better than they were a year ago. How much better remains to be seen.
Yeah. I think, the important thing, I look at last year's team and obviously Elite Eight, a great season. And you could probably say pretty confidently that if that team was not so bad shooting threes, let's say they were 75th as opposed to 320th or whatever they were, that they maybe now they're Final Four team, like they did all
Yeah,
the other
maybe.
things. Right. And that may be the difference. It's not probably the most critical aspect, but it certainly
Yeah,
matters.
you could.
It doesn't mean it's obviously wrong.
That's a fair argument to say. That might have been the one thing that separated them from an Auburn, a Florida, a Houston, is that they weren't quite as good as those teams shooting the jumper. Maybe. I still look at it, and I don't think that Auburn loss came down to them not being able to hit threes.
No.
But fair enough.
Yeah, certainly didn't help. You can say for sure. All right, so the fifth and final key to the game is the rotation, and certainly, if you look at this from a starting lineup standpoint, I think it's pretty much set for four of those positions. I think the question mark is at the three, or
Yep.
no, the two,
The
I
two.
suppose, right? Yeah, whether it's
two.
Kurtang or Trey Fort,
Yep.
and that may be one that varies throughout the season. It might go back and forth. It might be we start
Absolutely.
Trey Fort and then Kurtang can force his way in, and I kind of go back and forth in my mind how that will transpire. Whether it's give it to the veteran, and then if Kurtang proves it, it'll be given to him. If he makes it, I don't know. I mean, I just don't know how that.
Well,
And
I
some
think
maybe it doesn't matter in minutes more than actually starting too.
yeah, that's true. That's always true. But I think it comes down to one thing between those guys. And I agree that's the only spot that's really in flux. Who defends better? We know this. It's not a mystery. That's what's going to determine the roles. Which one of them defends better? So you've heard
This will be a good test.
things. I think that they're optimistic that they can get Trey Fort where they need him to be. The question is, how fast does that happen? And I don't think anybody's convinced it's happened yet. So, Kurtang doesn't have the athletic horsepower Trey Fort has, but he's got a year in the system at Michigan State. He's got a year of understanding what's required, the level you got to play at, the focus, the attention to detail, understanding the scheme. And I guess I'm going to be a little bit surprised if it's not Kurtang in this game. But you make a very good point. This is one that I think could go back and forth, and we could see change as the year progresses. Now, what you hope is that eventually you find an equilibrium with it and guys have sorted it out. They're both going to play a lot because they have to. Michigan State wants to play with depth. They want to play a lot of people, keep guys fresh, keep transition game rolling, keep the defense at the levels it needs to be. So they're both going to play a lot. But I do think how that's going to sort out is going to ultimately be determined by who defends better, more consistently. Pretty simple. Because
Yeah.
they both can get it done offensively. I mean, that's one thing. Trey Fort, you heard that from the moment he got on campus, is he was wowing people with what he could do offensively. I'll put it this way: if Trey Fort can defend at an acceptable level, look out, because he can
Yeah.
do everything they need, including handling the ball, giving Jeremy a little bit of support, which apparently was a surprise. We got told that by John Borovich back in the summer, early summer, that was a pleasant surprise when they got him in here. So I think all those things are all of that. The defense is what's going to determine how that spot sorts out. But I'm also interested to see the rest of the rotation. I'm interested to see how much time Jordan Scott gets, because we've heard very encouraging things recently, the last couple of weeks, from Tom Izzo about his development. And boy, if he's actually ready to come in and give you, and I'm not shooting for the moon, but if he can give you 12 minutes a night, it's pretty solid. Hit a jumper or two, play good defense. They said that's where he's really made strides too, is defensively. Izzo compared him to Max Christie the other day. He said he's not quite as good, but that's, we remember Max as a disappointment because everybody expected him to be a big-time scorer. He was a McDonald's All-American. MSU beat Duke out for him, all those things.
Right.
And he struggled. He struggled all year long with his shot. Never found it. But Max Christie was, for a true freshman, really played well overall. If you look, he was a starter. So if Jordan Scott's evoking those sorts of thoughts, I'm interested to see what happens when he gets on the floor. I'm interested to see how much time Divine Ugochukwu gets.
And where he plays.
Right, because he's a wild card. We know he's going to get some minutes behind Jeremy at the point, but what else might be there for him? And he's a guy who I can see forcing his way into more playing time than people are assuming, if he's as good as I think he'll be on the defensive end. I think he's a guy they think can transition pretty quickly in terms of what MSU demands defensively. And then, we look at the post guys. You look Cam Ward, freshman, again, a guy Izzo's been raving about, which is not usual for him with a freshman. He evoked Antonio. He said he was a more skilled Antonio Smith, basically. Mm-hmm. That is, I don't know if people are paying enough attention to that, because that is a mouthful for him to be saying that. And then Jesse McCulloch. Is Jesse pretty much exclusively a 5-man, or are we going to see him in some 2 big looks where he plays at the 4? And we've heard great things about him for a year.
Yeah.
How well does that all translate? So there's a lot to sort out. Last year it wasn't just that it was a 10-man rotation. It's that the minutes were distributed so equitably above those players, right? I don't quite expect that same level this year, but I'm going to be interested. And again, it's the first game. It doesn't tell the whole story, but I'm going to be interested to see, as a starting point, where are we with this rotation? And so we could use that as a baseline to set expectations going forward and see where things might be developing, where they might change or shift. But it's our first look at it. So you got to think about that.
Yeah. It'll certainly be interesting development for their first 5 to 10 games of the season to see where that lands. And as players develop and change too, get comfortable in roles, that obviously is going to move around too, which we saw last year as well. We see every year. So what you see at the beginning of the year is not going to how it's going to be when it closes, obviously. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to getting going again and being back in East Lansing to check out the games. It's never very busy. I think it's a Big Ten plus game, BTN plus. So maybe a little difficult for some people to watch, although you can pretty much catch anything on somehow streaming on YouTube or something. It's somewhere you can get it. Sort of, I don't know if it's pirated technically, but not to tell people to break the law, but for watching basketball. So, all right, until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.